Hey guys, Cody Davis here, introducing a great friend of mine who has actually served as both an inspiration and a mentor in a lot of ways, mainly because of what he has done with his life, his career, and what he is actively doing for the community. So I want to introduce Dr. Wes Robins, owner and operator of Eternal Strength. And so I would love for you to actually tell us, not only who you are, but what is Eternal Strength and why is it important to this community?
Awesome. Cody, I'm grateful to be here, grateful to have this opportunity, and I appreciate the introduction. So, yes, a lot of my life's work has been in psychology, counseling. I'm a licensed professional counselor, then have my PhD from the University of West Georgia in consciousness and society and eternal strength. It's interesting if I go back and I trace so I have two little daughters, and one of my daughters has found my old high school yearbooks.
Cool.
And in the back of the senior one, we got to pick a baby picture. And you could pick a baby picture and then write some like different inspirational things.
Sure.
And in the baby picture I chose, one of the inspirational things that I wrote was eternal strength. Wow. And so that was when I was like 17, 18 years old, and I wrote it because my favorite musician, Ben Harper, I got to meet him when I was 15, and I wrote him a letter, and he wrote me back a handwritten letter and signed it Eternal Strength. So when I hear those words, it's like more than the sinner. It's this bigger mission that's driven me my whole life, and that's been inspirational. But the sinner Eternal Strength grew out of my private practice. So I had a private practice where I was serving young people as young as 10 years of age and as old as 25 that were dealing with anxiety, depression, substance abuse, self-harm, suicidality. And I had 3 different private practice offices. They all grew in size. And I was doing very person-centered, humanistic, relational counseling. So these young people would come in, and I considered it sacred, loved the work, and after about 6 years of it, what I noticed was, even though it was feeding my soul in every way, the young people I was serving, and the families in particular, had been taken through the mental health industry in a way where they were still struggling and needed more support. So this was a lot of young people that had been to like a wilderness therapeutic
Sure.
boarding school, residential treatment center, IOP, PHP, and I was getting calls from families that were like, look, my kid's been to 2 wilderness programs, 3 different IOPs, met with 3 clinicians, and is still struggling. They say you're the guy. And initially, I was like, you're damn right. I'm the guy. And then down the line, I was like, man, I love what I do, and I know I'm good at it. I can build relationship and connect, but I knew that these families needed more. And so part of me wanted to stay in private practice for years. That's what I planned to do. I was going to finish my PhD, write some books, teach, supervise, present, and have that be that with my career path. So 2020, find this building, 8,500 square feet, and I look at my wife and I'm like, I think I'm feeling called to do this. I want to build the first ever community youth center that's got music, art, experiential work, a rec center, a gym, and have a very comprehensive amount of clinically competent therapeutic care,
Sure.
mental health oriented. And so we got the building, and I just started to work nonstop. And we started with a team of 4. It grew to 17. And then every growth experience that I could imagine as a leader, building a culture, growing myself psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, has happened in the last 4 years. And it's been beautiful in many ways because I've grown but we've been able to grow and help these families. And how we look at it is now we have a team of 11, and we've built a family to help the families. So at Eternal Strength, we do customizable care. It's monthly. Family can come in, and we sit with the family. We basically determine what they need that month. We do individual therapy, experiential mentoring, and then therapeutic process groups, and we a la carte and customize those services for the family and what they need that month, and then we course correct every month, building a treatment team, and it's beautiful, man. And the youth that come in are so unique, so creative, but so many of our youth are struggling, whether it be anxiety, depression, substance abuse, self-harm, suicidality, and what we believe is community, relational connection, and helping young people tune into what they're passionate about are some of the most core healing tools that they could ever work on, and that's what we want to help build. And when we do that, we find that a lot of the symptomology starts to decrease.
God, and man, like I do know that you guys do such wonderful work, man. Have you ever put any real thought into why you think there's so much suffering with our youth today?
Yeah, probably too much. I put a lot of thought into that. It probably haunts me. And you watch all these, whether it's philosophers or theorists or academics or professionals or clinicians, they'll all have a root cause, right? Mm-hmm. It's this or it's that. I think it's a culmination of a lot of different things. But I definitely feel like society and culture is exacerbating a lot of the pain and suffering that we're seeing in youth growth and development. And I don't think it's necessarily intentional. It's just part of what our society and culture tends to value, which is individual growth, monetary gain, fame, success, adulation, power, all of what are referred to as these extrinsic factors that we're told from the time we're young are going to make us whole, bring us peace and joy. And what you find in a lot of the psychological research is it's the opposite. It's the intrinsic, which is relationship, community, and self-worth directly tied to how you're growing. Am I becoming who I need to be? What is my mission, my purpose? Who am I? What's my relationship to the community and the tribe and different ways? And so I think that would probably be my biggest answer, would be there's a discrepancy in what our culture is telling us will make us well and what will really bring us holistic health. And it's the opposite of what our culture has preached for so long will make us happy.
Sure. Yeah. God, man. You use this interesting word that I love, tribe. I think about like myself as a troubled youth, if you will, and there was so much of that want to be a part of, but I wasn't able to identify that as a kid. It just showed up in all of these different behaviors, and so I think that you talking about really bringing in this concept of tribe with kids and stuff like that, so essential, dude.
Yeah.
So essential. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. What is it that inspired you to work with kids, or young people? I really like that terminology, by the way, the young people, because that is what they are, right? They're just people who are younger. They're not kids, children. Yeah. They're just young people. I really like that. But yeah, what inspired you to work with young people?
Yeah, and I like very much. I tend to use the term youth. That feels better.
Yeah.
Yeah, but young people, youth feels like there's a mutual respect.
Absolutely.
You say kid, child, there's an immediate dominance hierarchy.
I'm here, you're here. Yeah.
Come on, kid.
Yep.
What do you know? Yeah, you're a punk ass kid.
Yeah.
But I really think it was a combination of things, but a big part of it was my own growth and development. So 17 to 23, really rough years for me. And you bring up identity. And I think a lot of adolescent and young emerging adult growth and development is seeking identity and connection. And I know for me, I hit this place where when I would look at my future, I felt very disillusioned. I was very frustrated with the world. The only thing that brought me peace and excitement and increased will to live was artistry. It would be musicians, artists, creators, and when a new album would come out of one of my favorite artists, I'd get this surge of like, this is awesome. And so what I noticed in that time period as I went through my own dark night of the soul and got to the place where I was about 24 and my soul was just tired, man. I was tired of running the way that I had been. And I started to move away from self-destructive behaviors into some of my own healing and growth work. That's when it kind of kicked in, and I was like, you know what? If I was able to do some of this growth work for myself, one of the most valuable things that I could ever do is that work with somebody else. And I always felt really comfortable, Cody, sitting with youth, whereas many clinicians that I met with hated it, or it felt really tumultuous, or they didn't know how to maneuver it, and it just came natural to me.
Sure.
And music and art, and so even in my private practice, it was like, man, young people would come in and I'd be like, yo, what kind of music are you listening to? Let's watch this video. Do you play guitar? I'm listening to this. And it would just like flow. And so that once I knew that I was bringing value and I had a spark there that I was good at, I doubled down on it. And I was like, I think this is what I want to do in my life.
That's super cool, man. That's you know, it's interesting. You've mentioned it a couple of times since we've talked. You know, the importance of music, and what it is that we do. And you know, even though working with young adults or young people versus me, who primarily works with a strictly kind of substance use disorder population, you know, I think music is such a beautiful way to connect with people, and it is kind of the universal thing where it's like it almost doesn't matter what population you're working with. It's like, hey man, that's such a wonderful tool to connect with people. And I think that if more people utilized kind of that music therapy experiential kind of culmination or combo, it would probably start to see a little more success at times with people. So obviously with me and kind of a lot of the missions that I'm a part of like recovery from substance use disorder, recovery from mental health, I've started to look at it a little bit more of like, recovery from just like the human condition, right? Because I really think that, whether it's mental health, substance abuse, gambling addiction, any of the things, right? It's all just like, hey man, I'm just trying to not feel how I feel right now, right? And I'm just trying to escape. It's so much more about like kind of the recovering human than anything else. And so, I talk about my philosophies of recovery all day long. I'd love to hear what your philosophy towards recovery for like a family that you work with, like what does that really look like? Because, thinking about, well, hey man, I've got this adolescent, right, who still has these guardians in place and all that sort of stuff. It's never just treating the adolescent. It's you're treating the whole kind of family unit. So like what do you think recovery really looks like for a family unit like that?
That's a beautiful question, and you spark my mind 1,000 different ways, but I'll try and reel it in. I think a lot. So one of the figures that has inspired me a lot is Carl Rogers, who's the father of person-centered or client-centered humanistic counseling. And the humanistic counseling or psychology field really started to arise in the 70s, and it had some pretty prominent baseline tenets, which was human beings are organisms that have the capacity for good and for self-actualization. and what are the ways that are impeding people from being able to get to the best versions of themselves or to grow holistically. But there was a quote that Carl Rogers says, and he says, when you can sit with another human soul and they feel fully seen and heard and understood, then you can open the floodgates for change and growth. And so I think a lot of what we do from a person-centered relational standpoint with the entire family is we listen to them, and we really try and understand where they are and what they're maneuvering, and then work with them co-collaboratively to put together a customizable way that they can do their own therapeutic journey for what they need. And every family is a microcosm in and of itself. So any of the programs that are like, hey, this is how we treat all families, I worry, because every family is different, every youth, every human soul is different. And when we talk about holistic recovery, I think I start to think about conscious awareness. So for me and the role that we play at Eternal Strength, it's how do we bring as much awareness and consciousness to arenas that this family may have been blind or unconscious to. Their patterns, the ways that they communicate with one another, the ways that they're trying to run or duck or dodge pain or anxiety. And typically if we can get connection and they can see that it's a sacred space and we have a ton of trust, then we can start to open up and look at all those areas that maybe for a long time they've, for a multitude of various reasons, haven't looked at, where it's been too challenging to look at. And again, you can bring it back to society and culture. We don't really give a lot of space for people. People are running around trying to make money to survive. And it's task-based existence and career growth, and has everything to do with efficiency and where are you going and what are you getting done. And there's very little time to slow down and say, wait a minute, who am I? What do I want from this life? What is important to me? And then I think it's a deeper dive into why do I think the way that I think? Why do I behave the way that I behave? But you better be working with somebody that you trust before you ever get comfortable enough to start to explore those things. And so I think it's in that exploration that we can help families find the answers that they are the ones coming up with. It's not like we're giving them the answer. It's if we can sit with the family enough, sit with the young person enough, they can reveal to us the healing modalities that they need to move towards the growth that they want. And so it's very co-collaborative. It's not us saying, here's our idea of what a healthy family is.
Sure.
We're going to turn your family into that. It's tell us about the suffering and the turmoil and what's not working, and let's figure out other pathways for your family to be able to heal in the way that your family needs to be able to heal. And that only happens when you're really looking at each individual family, differently.
Truly client-centered.
Yeah.
So you talked about how it really does have to kind of work collaboratively with the family, with the young person, and really getting there. I know that something that I experience with the family work that I do more often than not is a lot of lack of accountability or ownership on the family side. And what I mean by that is not that they're not willing to say, I'm a part of this, but it's a lot of, and again, I work with adults only. They're like, nope, here's my kid, your problem now, like fix them. And it's kind of like, well, hey, I would imagine that you had something to do with this, and so I'd like to kind of bring you into this. And there's this constant like, I'm not the one with a problem, what are you talking about? They're the one with the drug problem, you need to fix them. Kind of off with them, right?
Yeah.
How often do you kind of run up against that with it still being guardians, as opposed to, hey, yes, this is my child, but they're an adult, so they can get out of the house? Like what does that look like more from like the youth space?
I think a lot I have a tremendous amount of empathy and compassion for the parents that bring youth to eternal strength. And oftentimes they've been through the mental health industry, and so they're scared, they're fearful, and they feel helpless in a lot of ways. When you got a kid that's severely self-harming, has had 3 suicide attempts, whose relationship with substances is putting them close to death or overdosing, it puts you in panic mode. And so I think the ability to think clearly and be poised and calm just kind of goes out the window. And I can sit here all day long and be a PhD psychologist and an LPC and run the center, but man, you put my own 2 daughters in turmoil's way and I kick into dad mode. Mm-hmm. And at that point it's like, who's going to help my kid? Where do we need to go? And the focus becomes so behavioral. Mm-hmm. And that's the piece that I see with parents is they will come in with this idea, but if you're coming at it, it's almost like quantum physics, man. If you're watching it and trying to get it to change, it won't. And then you like glance away from it and change it and you're like, wow. And so it's working with parents in a way that they feel heard, seen, and we're not trying to make them feel guilty or shameful because they already feel so much of that. Like a lot of times these parents aren't ready to look at what role that they played or what's going on because it hurts too much. Yeah. But then when you can start to say, hey, look, a family system is like a spider web, and you can't go up to a spider web and touch a part of it and not have it shake the entirety of it. Right. Like it's a web of connectivity, and everybody in this family system is impacting everybody else all the time, like it or not. So the families that do the best are the ones who start to focus the energy on what they each have tangible control over. The dad, or even if we have non-traditional families, one of the parents will be like, hey, here's what I need to work on and what I can do better and what I have control over. And then it goes down the line. And when families start to do that, each family member will start to take ownership and responsibility. But typically what you get a lot of times is, I don't need to take any ownership over me, and it's just finger pointing. Mm-hmm. And then it's like there was an old Simpsons episode, man, where they went to family therapy, and the psychologist hooked all the Simpsons up to electronic shock, and they could shock each other. And he was like, now this is an exercise. And before he could even get started, they just started to shock the shit out of each other. And they couldn't stop, and it took out the power in the whole town. But it's like, but you do it with care. You do it with empathy, and it can be very frustrating. So when you ask the question of like, how often do we see it? We see it every day, every week, every family. But if the family can trust us enough and we can show up and listen to them, then they know that the best thing that we're doing is holding sacred space and walking through the fire with their family. Sure. We're holding hand in hand and saying, let's look at every angle we can, ways that we can influence and help your child, and at the same time help you.
You talked about, I love that you emphasized that, we're not dealing with broken people here. Mm. Like the truth is, like I think that it's more along the lines of we're helping people navigate through their own broken relationships and broken systems. More than anything else, because dude, I really love that there is no like, hey, oh, you're just broken, right? It's like then somebody needs to fix you. It's just like, no, these relationships are broken. And it's okay that we don't know how to fix them. Like that's the help that we're seeking, right? It's just like, hey, we don't know how to fix this relationship. It's not a just here or even just here. Yeah. I mean, sometimes the relationship can be, I don't know how to fix this. Right. But it's still I'm not broken. Yeah. It's just the relationship is either severed or disrupted, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I love that intentional language that you've used, man. Something that I wanted to touch on with you, man, is this concept of authenticity. And I think that, the reason why I wanted to bring that up today is because, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but, one of the reasons that I really appreciate you as a person is because, when I met you, not gonna lie, I'm like, wait a second, this guy is like a therapist, and specifically like a therapist with kids. He kind of looks like somebody I used to ride motorcycles with back in the day and like sell dope with. And you know, the truth is, man, like there was just something so intriguing behind that to me, because I was like, this makes me comfortable, you know, and I think that there's like something so cool behind that, right? As opposed to, I'm gonna be a therapist who comes with a, you know, button down and slacks and clean cut, or I'm gonna wear a blazer, or you know what I think a lot of people have in their mind. This is what going to therapy is gonna look like. Yeah. And so, I kind of wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth, like, you know, why do you think being authentic is important?
Yeah. That's an awesome question, and I think it's a delicate one too, because it really does come down to like authenticity being that what you feel internally, you have the ability or willingness to express that externally, even if you're worried about some of the consequences. And so, you know, I look at my own growth and development, and I know that something started to happen for me. I've always loved tattoos, and I started to get tattooed when I was like 18, and my parents really didn't like it. And then I got, but nothing visible, like not my hands, my neck, my face. But then when I did start my private practice, I was like, this is the real deal. Now I'm an LPC. I'm starting my private practice. I'm doing a website. And what immediately came up was I need to look a certain way. And so my first picture that I put up on my website, I was in a sweater vest and a tie, no visible tattoos. But then I remember weird stuff would start to happen where clients would come in, see some of my tattoos, and be like, oh man, that's awesome. And we'd start to talk about it, and we'd have these really robust, rich conversations about art, image, persona, ego, identity. And the more honest I could be about my own growth journey, the more I could give them permission to do the same. So then I started to, I remember it got funky at one point, man, because I had this one client. I always wanted to grow a really big beard, but I was worried that I would look like unkempt and all those things that society kind of tells you, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. And I knew it was funny when it got to the point where I was making up in my head lies that I would tell to people if they asked me why I hadn't shaved. And one of the lies that I came up with was, I'll just tell them that like one of my clients dared me not to shave. And I'm like, dude, what can't I just grow a beard and be cool with it? And then, so little by little, I started to get more comfortable expressing myself in a way where I was like, you know what? This may not be typical in this particular field, but I'm going to go do this. And as I grew, got my license as a professional counselor, started the PhD program, that's when I was like, you know what? People would refer to me a lot, and they'd be like, you're going to love Wes, but let me give you a heads up. He's covered in tattoos. And this was before any of my visible tattoos. But it was helping more than it was hurting. And so then I was like, wait a minute. I'm in a PhD program. I got my license as a professional counselor. My private practice is thriving. I think I'm going to go get tattooed the way I've always wanted to. However, I will say that in my identity exploration and body modification journey, whatever you want to call it, the sole important piece is knowing who the hell I am beyond all of that. This is external. This is form. Yeah. Jim Carrey talks about it well. He says, play with form all day. Cut your hair, wear makeup, how you dress, even the ritualistic body modifications, whatever you do, it's like that Damian Marley quote, your body is just a vehicle transporting your soul. It's what's inside of people that's beauty to behold. And if I identify with my tattoos too much, I disconnect from my soul. So I like it, and I like how I look, and I feel comfortable in my skin. But I can remember calling my buddy John one time, and I may have told you this story, and he's about 60, and he lives down in Florida, and he's just awesome, and I love him, and he's taught me so much. And I was like, John, I'm about to get like another face tattoo, and I'm going to get another gold tooth. And he was like, I don't give a shit. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, whatever, man. If it makes you feel cool and you like how you look, great. He said, I love you, man. I'd love you even if you got burnt up in a fire and 3/4 of your body was covered in severe burns. I love you. And that hits home in a way that's like, yes, find out who you are through identity exploration and how you want to look, hair, clothes, and present yourself to the world, but you better damn sure know who you are beyond that. And so authenticity for me has so much more to do with what you're radiating from your spirit than how you look externally. And if I wanted to psychoanalyze myself, dude, there's such a part of me that I'm so trickster. So if I was in the tattoo industry, I'd probably remove all my tattoos and wear a suit to work as a tattoo artist. And it's weird, you know what I mean? Just to be different from the other tattoo artists. Yeah. There's something about that, like I'm the archetype of the trickster. I'm going to do something different. So it just so happened that I'm a therapist, and most therapists look like this. I'm going to look like this. Yeah. Who knows what's going on in my head with that type of stuff. But like I said, most of the time, the authenticity I feel radiating from somewhere internal in people. You know, looks can kind of catch us a certain way, but you know, man, you know when you're sitting with somebody if they're performing or if they're starting to reveal more and more honesty. Yeah.
So, you know, you talk about it, man, this being comfortable with self and identity. What do you really think? You know, I know that you referred to that you had that period of time when you were like 17 into your early 20s that were kind of rough and stuff like that. Do you mind sharing, like, you know, what was it that you think like really started to like make you feel more solidified as like, this is who I am, and not just because of the work that you do, but like, this is who I am as like a person showing up in society?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I can think about how, you know, I can remember growing up, and I didn't start, my substance use didn't start till a little bit later, till like 17. So I was a late bloomer with it, and then ran pretty hard. And in that, it was a lot of impulsivity, sensation seeking, risk taking, exploration. But in that journey, I definitely feel like I veered off course from my heart, my soul, my morals, my ethics, a lot of the ways that I had been raised. And something in me at 24 really yearned for the stillness and the peace and the connectivity I had with myself at 15. Like being 15 years old, I knew who I was at that point. Before drugs, I was playing guitar, I was listening to records, Jethro Tull, Charles Mingus, like jazz, going through all this stuff, and I felt still exploratory, but I felt really grounded in who Wes was. And then it's like I went on this crazy journey to kind of see the fringes, and lost a part of myself that I never really feel like I lost, but it felt like that. And I had to almost reconnect. So much of my growth in my mid to late 20s was trying to get back to the connectivity that maybe I'd veered away from. And I think a lot of that came from just upbringing. I was so fortunate, man. I got my mom is like, you've met her.
She is. She's a gangster.
Dude, she's a gangster. She's got her master's in behavioral analysis. She's the executive director of Safe Path, a children's advocacy center, works with abused and neglected kids. My dad has been one of my biggest influences in terms of music. Took me to my first concert, Rolling Stones, when I was in 8th grade. My little sister, Hannah, has always been just this incredibly unique human, and we had such a tight-knit relationship. So I felt pretty grounded in who I was. And then it's like I went on this wild journey and had to kind of come back into myself. But then once I did that, it was not so much who am I, but what am I here for? What's my mission? What's my purpose? What do I need to go pour energy into that will feed my soul and continue to push me to grow in the ways that I need to. And that became more and more clear.
Do you believe that any of, that process, like, that kind of reconnecting back to that, earlier self, was any of that, a process of forgiving self for straying away, or, having, kind of going against some of those morals and stuff like that? Was there ever any, like, piece of you that was like, hey, I have to forgive myself for this in order to grow and heal?
Yes. I'd probably phrase it as I had a tremendous amount of grace for myself. So it didn't necessarily feel like I have to go do inner child work and forgive in this particular way. It was the more I grew, the more I could see the precipice of what led me to do certain things. The more I could understand what was at the root of some of my impulsive decisions, which was really a tremendous amount of fear and anxiety, and not knowing how to maneuver those sensations and those emotions. And when I would start to feel too intensely is typically the times that I just go, anything but this. I can't sit with this, whether it's too much love, too much connectivity, too much feeling too much. And so I think I started to offer myself a lot of grace rather than judgment. And so you could call that a type of forgiveness.
Absolutely.
It was definitely just looking at and going like, dude, be easy on yourself, man.
Yeah.
Like, you made the decisions you made. And I think about it often, Cody, and I'm like, I don't know who I would be without that journey. And that's something hard to talk to youth about, because sometimes when you share your journey, they'll take it in a way where they go, great, I just need to go on my own dark night of the soul. And you're like, whoa, you don't have to go to war to know that it's hell.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, I think the harder thing to get people to understand sometimes as well, which is that, like, your story one day is going to help a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And there's also the narrative of like, dude, I don't care. I just want to stop feeling like shit right now, dude. Like, that sounds altruistic and everything else, but like, dude, I just want to stop killing myself on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I love that you kind of touched on this. I'm kind of reframing it a little bit, but the reconstruction of your relationship to the fear, the anxiety, and all of that. And, man, I do truly believe that, so much of a true recovery process and so much of that, like, continuation of human suffering really comes down to really poor relationships to fear, because if you think about how we as humans react to fear, typically is like where a lot of our unhealthy behavior comes from, right? And so it's really about this just reconstruction to how do I approach fear, and when I experience, because it's not we're just going to diminish fear. It's like, no, when I experience it, how do I show up with it? And what do I do with it, right?
Beautifully said.
If there was one message that you were able to give to a struggling family that is dealing with, mental health, substance abuse,
there will be a light at some point, and it may not come in the way that you anticipate, but to remain hopeful that nothing is stagnant. Whatever pain, sorrow, turmoil, struggling that you're going through will not stay that way, and it may move shape and form. And I do believe that through awareness, consciousness expansion, and radical acceptance for where things are, that is the portal to growth. So to stop avoiding the thing that is happening right now in your family system, or that you need to look at, anything that you're unconscious to or you're repressing, to have the bravery and the courage to begin to look at it and know that that is the beginning of healing. And it may be a hard and difficult journey, but it'll be a lot harder if you continue to put a blind eye to that. And to just have hope, to know that there is a light, and to continue to seek communities that can help you maneuver whatever you're going through.
Well, man, God knows the community that you have created, quite frankly, because what it is you do is so original and unique to the behavioral health field here in Atlanta and Southeast and all of that. Thank God for you, dude.
Cool.
I think that if more people were able to take the approach that you are currently taking to helping heal the family systems, man, I think that we're going to actually look at like a healthier fucking future. So,
Cody,
thanks for all that you do, man.
Means the world. And I'll say, I do want to give acknowledgement. Like, man, a lot of times I feel like a vessel, and I am, and I'm looking to God, and I'm like, put me where you need to put me, guide me, tell me what to do. And so in many ways I don't feel like it's me, like it's ego. I understand that it is me in certain ways, but I don't feel like I'm any different. And I feel like if somebody's drawn to do this type of work, it's why I teach, it's why I supervise. It's like, I don't want this to be the West Show. And I don't want to have 150 eternal strengths, and that's the only place that you can go to do that type of healing work. I want to make systemic change by any means necessary, and have that be other counselors, clinicians, humanistic youth workers being inspired, because that's what got me where I got. Like, I had mentors and I went, man, they're doing it a cool way, I want to do it like that. So if I can be a mirror and inspire others to do it, then I think we can make that real beautiful communal systemic change, and everybody can be a radical youth worker. So thanks, man, this is awesome.
Thank you so much for your time, brother. Appreciate it.